Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated with our latest stories. The house felt cavernously quiet after everyone left. That's the way it usually is after one of my sister Carol's big family get-togethers. A whirlwind of noise, laughter, overlapping conversations, the clatter of plates, and then silence. A deep, settling silence that always seemed to amplify the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hallway. I'm Sarah, by the way. Pushing 50, though most days I feel like I left that number behind a while ago, especially in the quiet moments like these. I live alone now, since my husband Frank passed away 3 years back. The house, this big old rambling place Frank and I poured our hearts into, sometimes feels more like a museum of memories than a home. Pleasant memories, mostly, but memories nonetheless. Tonight's gathering was for my nephew's graduation. Good kid. Head screwed on right. The whole extended family turned up. Cousins, aunts, uncles, the works. Carol always did know how to throw a party. The remnants were scattered around the living room. A few stray napkins, a half-eaten bowl of pretzels I hadn't gotten around to clearing, the faint scent of grilled burgers still hanging in the air despite the open windows. I was just starting to gather the stray glasses, debating whether to wash them tonight or leave them for the morning, when I noticed I wasn't quite alone. Liam, my cousin Martha's son, was still sitting on the porch swing outside the open French doors. I hadn't even realized he hadn't left with his parents. He was just sitting there, elbows on his knees, staring out into the darkening yard where fireflies were starting their nightly dance. He's a young man now, maybe 21, 22? Hard to keep track. I mostly remembered him as a gangly teenager with braces, always polite but quiet, usually hovering near the edges of family functions. Tonight, he looked older, more contemplative. There was a stillness about him that hadn't been there before. Liam? Honey, are you all right? I asked, stepping closer to the doorway. I thought you'd left with your folks. He looked up, a little startled, as if pulled from a deep thought. A faint smile touched his lips. Oh, hey, Sarah. Yeah, They went ahead. I told them I'd catch a rideshare back later. Just wanted a bit of quiet, I guess. I leaned against the doorframe, looking out at him. The porch light cast long shadows, highlighting the thoughtful set of his jaw. He wasn't the awkward kid anymore. There was a maturity in his eyes that surprised me. Well, you picked the right place for quiet, I chuckled softly. It gets pretty still here after the storm passes. It's nice, he said, his gaze returning to the yard. Peaceful. Different from my place near campus. There was an awkward pause, the kind that often happens between relatives who see each other maybe twice a year. Usually, I'd offer a quick goodbye, maybe a leftover slice of cake, and retreat back into my quiet routine. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the uncharacteristic stillness about him, or maybe it was just the lingering echo of Frank's absence, a void that sometimes craved simple human presence. Want some coffee? I offered impulsively. Or something stronger. I think there's still some iced tea. He hesitated for just a second, then nodded. Coffee sounds good, actually. If it's not too much trouble. No trouble at all, I said, genuinely meaning it. Come on in. Might as well be comfortable. He unfolded himself from a swing and followed me into the kitchen. The bright fluorescent light seemed harsh after the soft glow of the porch. He looked a little out of place, standing there, amidst the post-party clutter I hadn't teddied yet. He ran a hand through his dark hair, the same thick hair his mom always fussed over. Sorry about the mess, I mumbled, clearing a space on the counter. Don't be, he said quickly. It looks like people had a good time. Your sister always throws great parties. She does, I agreed, spooning coffee grounds into the filter. She's the family connector. He leaned against the counter, watching me. And what does that make you? The question was light, curious. I paused, pot in hand. Good question. Maybe the archivist? The keeper of the quiet corners? I smiled wryly. He smiled back, a real smile this time, one that reached his eyes. I like that. Keeper of the quiet corners. As the coffee maker gurgled to life, filling the kitchen with its comforting aroma, a different kind of quiet settled between us. Not awkward this time, but expectant. Like the air before a summer rain. I poured 2 mugs, adding a splash of milk to mine, remembering he took his black from some long-ago holiday gathering. He took the mug with a quiet thanks. Instead of heading back to the living room, we just stood there for a minute, sipping our coffee in the brightly lit kitchen, the remnants of the party around us. It felt strange, yet surprisingly natural. I had a feeling this conversation wasn't going to be about graduation parties or catching up on family gossip. There was something else brewing, something unspoken hanging in the air between my cousin's son and me, right there in the heart of my quiet, memory-filled house. We migrated back towards the living room, mugs in hand. I sank into my usual armchair, the one worn perfectly to the contours of my body over years of reading and quiet evenings. Frank used to joke it was my throne. Liam didn't take the main sofa, the one most guests gravitate towards. Instead, he chose the smaller love-a-seat opposite me, angling himself slightly so we weren't facing head-on. It felt less like an interview, more like a shared space. The grandfather clock chimed the half-hour, its deep tones resonating through the stillness. Outside, the crickets had taken over from the fireflies, their chirping a constant, soothing backdrop. So, I began, trying to bridge the silence gently. Big day for your cousin Michael. Heading off to college in the fall? Liam nodded, swirling the coffee in his mug. Yeah, engineering. He's excited. A bit nervous too, I think. That's understandable, I said. It's a big step. New place, new people, whole new world. I thought back to my own college days, a lifetime ago it seemed, full of anxieties and hopes Frank and I had navigated together. Were you nervous? Liam asked, looking up suddenly. His gaze was direct, searching. It wasn't just polite small talk. I was taken aback for a moment. It wasn't the kind of question young relatives usually asked. Terrified, I admitted with a small laugh. I grew up in a small town. Moving to the city felt like moving to another planet. But, I added, sobering slightly, it was also exhilarating. The possibilities seemed endless. He absorbed that, nodding slowly. Possibilities, he echoed softly, almost to himself. He took another sip of coffee. Sometimes the possibilities feel more overwhelming than exciting. There it was, a crack in the polite facade, a glimpse of something deeper. I recognized that feeling, that subtle weight of expectation and uncertainty that often accompanies youth, but sometimes revisits us later in life too. I know what you mean, I said quietly. It can feel like you're standing at a crossroads with 100 different paths, and everyone expects you to know exactly which one to take, map and compass in hand. He looked at me, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. Yeah, exactly. Like, everyone else seems to have it figured out. Their major, their career path, who they're supposed to be. And I'm just... He trailed off, shrugging slightly, looking down at his mug. Just figuring it out? I finished gently. There's no shame in that, Liam. Honestly, most people are just pretending they have it figured out. We're all just improvising, really. Some are just better actors than others. A small, genuine smile touched his lips again. My dad wants me to go into finance, like him. And you? He hesitated. I don't know. It seems safe, secure, but it doesn't exactly set my world on fire, you know. He looked up, his expression earnest. I love music. Playing guitar, writing songs. It's the only thing that feels real. But telling my folks I want to be a musician, that's a conversation I'm not ready for. I listened, really listened, not just as his older relative, but as one person hearing another's quiet hopes and fears. I thought about Frank, how he'd given up his dream of being a carpenter to take a steady office job to support us. He never complained, but I knew there was a part of him that always missed the smell of sawdust, the feel of wood grain beneath his hands. Dreams are tricky things, I said softly. Sometimes we pack them away thinking it's practical, sensible, but they have a way of whispering to us in the quiet moments. He met my eyes, and there was a depth of understanding there that startled me. It felt like we were speaking a shared language, one that transcended the decades between us. The air crackled with a quiet intensity, not of tension, but of connection. He wasn't just my cousin's son anymore. He was a young man grappling with the big questions, sharing his vulnerability in the safety of my quiet living room. What did you dream of? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The question hung in the air. I hadn't expected the conversation to turn so personal, so reciprocal. I looked around the room at the photos on the mantelpiece, me and Frank, younger, happier perhaps, but certainly less complicated. What had I dreamed of before life mapped out its own course? I wanted to be a writer, I confessed, the words feeling rusty, unused. Travel the world, write stories about the people I met. Why didn't you? His question was simple, direct, devoid of judgment. Life. I answered with a shrug that felt heavier than it should. Met Frank, fell in love, built a life here. A good life, I added quickly. A very good life, but different. He nodded, his gaze thoughtful. It doesn't have to be either slash or, does it? The good life and the dream? His quiet observation struck a chord deep within me. It was something I hadn't allowed myself to consider, not really. Frank's passing had left a void, but perhaps it had also, unintentionally, opened a door I thought long closed. We sat in silence for a moment longer, the only sounds the ticking clock and the chirping crickets, but the silence was full, resonant with unspoken thoughts and burgeoning understanding. The unexpected intimacy of the conversation wrapped around us like a warm blanket on a cool night. The coffee in our mugs grew cold, but neither of us seemed to notice. The conversation flowed onwards, meandering through topics we'd never have broached at a bustling family barbecue. We talked about music, the bands he loved, the lyrics that spoke to him. He described the feeling of losing himself in playing his guitar, the way melodies could say things words couldn't. I found myself sharing things I hadn't voiced in years, not even to Frank sometimes. Thoughts about purpose, about the paths not taken, about the strange mix of contentment and restlessness that seemed to define this chapter of my life. Liam listened with an attentiveness that was incredibly validating. He didn't interrupt, didn't judge, just absorbed what I said, occasionally asking the question that showed he was truly hearing me. There was a maturity in his listening, an empathy that belied his years. It wasn't the forced politeness of a young relative making conversation. It felt like a genuine meeting of minds. He spoke about the pressures he felt, not just from his parents, but from society, from his peers. The pressure to succeed, to define himself, to have a plan. He confessed his fear of ending up in a life that felt comfortable but hollow. "It's like," he said, leaning forward slightly, his eyes intense, "everyone's running this race, and I'm not even sure I want to be on the track. But standing still feels like failing." "Maybe," I suggested gently, "it's not about standing still. Maybe it's about finding your own track, even if it looks completely different from everyone else's." He looked at me, a long, searching look, and then something shifted. It wasn't anything dramatic, just a subtle change in the energy between us. The air grew heavier, charged with an emotion I couldn't quite name. It was more than just understanding. It was a profound sense of being seen, truly seen, perhaps for the first time in a long while, both for him and for me. He reached across the small space separating the love seat and my armchair, not to touch me, but resting his hand, palm up, on the low coffee table between us. It was a simple gesture, open, unassuming. An invitation, perhaps not for physical contact, but for deeper connection. My heart gave a strange little flutter. It wasn't romantic or physical, not in that way. It was the startling intimacy of the moment, the unexpected depth of feeling that had sprung up between us in the quiet solitude of my home. Hesitantly, almost without thinking, I mirrored his gesture, placing my hand near his on the cool wood of the table. Our fingers weren't touching, but the proximity felt electric, charged with all the unspoken vulnerabilities and shared recognitions of the past hour. We just sat there for a long moment, our hands resting near each other, our eyes locked. In his gaze, I saw not just a young man struggling with his future, but a fellow soul navigating the complexities of life. And I wondered with a sudden jolt what he saw in mine. Did he see just his older cousin, his aunt's friend? Or did he see Sarah, the woman who once dreamed of writing, the woman still figuring things out herself? "Thank you, Sarah," he said finally, his voice soft but clear, "for listening, really listening." "Thank you, Liam," I replied, my own voice a little thick with emotion. "For talking, for trusting me." The moment stretched, suspended in the warm, lamplit air. It felt incredibly fragile yet powerful. This unexpected collision of two lives, two different generations finding common ground in shared humanity, in unspoken fears and quiet dreams. This was the unbelievable thing. Not some shocking event, but the intensity of this connection, the sudden, profound understanding that passed between us without needing elaborate words. It was the simple, startling truth of being genuinely seen and heard by another person, especially when you least expect it. It settled over me, a feeling of warmth mixed with a strange, poignant awareness of the moment's uniqueness. Nothing improper had happened, nothing inappropriate was suggested, yet it felt like a boundary had been crossed, not a physical one, but an emotional one, leading us into a territory of mutual respect and surprising intimacy that left me feeling both grateful and deeply moved. Eventually, the spell broke gently. Liam withdrew his hand, rubbing the back of his neck. "Wow, it's late," he murmured, glancing towards the grandfather clock, which now showed it was well past midnight. "I should probably get that ride share." "Yes, probably," I agreed, though a part of me felt reluctant to let the evening end. The connection felt precious, something I wanted to hold on to for just a little longer. He pulled out his phone, his fingers tapping on the screen. While he arranged his ride, I stood up and started gathering the cold coffee mugs. The simple domestic task felt grounding after the emotional intensity of our conversation. The silence returned, but it wasn't the empty silence from before. It was filled with the resonance of our shared words, the echo of understanding. When his phone pinged, signaling his ride was approaching, he stood up too. He looked around the room, then back at me. Thanks again, Sarah, for the call.